How many podcasts do you come across that have the balls to open up and let everything out there? And not only that, but let you say what you want to say. Well, that's why we're here. This is Truth, Lies, and Political Bullshit. An open forum where you're part of the show. Real, raw, and nothing is off limits. And we do mean nothing. So light it up and let's set this bitch on fire. Truth, lies, and political bullshit. And now your host, Sean Morse.
Timmy, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, pretty good, Sean. Look at, we got a busy week coming on with a lot of guests, and let's get right into it.
So listen, we had some great conversations over the last 2 months. We had Sheriff Apple come on, and we talked about the raise the age and the bail reform and the concerns we had, and we listened to it from his perspective as a law enforcement. We had John McDonald, who came in from the legislative standpoint of the bail reform, the raise the age. And just recently, last week, if I'm not mistaken, we were talking about this new law that was proposed. He believes it will go nowhere. But the fact that, legislators would be talking about a law that would limit the ability of police to pull people over for traffic stops is concerning at the highest level, wouldn't you think?
Oh, yeah, and including why would you even need a New York State inspection if you can drive around with a tail light?
Or registration, right?
You're bothered to register your car. None of it makes any sense. And I don't people down in New York City.
It doesn't. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But, I was telling you that we should really work really hard to see if we can get Lee Kinlan on and our show. Lee Kinlan is the real deal. He really is. This is a guy who, even if you don't know anything about politics or you don't know anything about the legal system, you've turned your TV on once or twice in your life and you've seen this man representing as a defense attorney some of the biggest and most high-profile cases that we have seen in the Capital Region. And he is a phenomenal defense attorney. So all of a sudden, his name gets brought up for district attorney. And I'm thinking to myself, this is like, if you're a baseball player, you got Lee Kinlan as your defense attorney. It's like having, Judge as a Yankee, a home run hitter. Why would this man decide to become a district attorney? I mean, I would have to assume he's given up some wealth, right? He's going into the public sector. It pays okay, but he's certainly not going to become a very wealthy man doing it. And is it something that he really wants to do? So we have invited him. And he was gracious enough to say he'd come on the show. So without further ado, hey, Lee Kinlan, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, guys.
It's good to see you.
How you doing today?
Thank you. Hey, Tim.
So I was just saying, very interesting, right? Your father was a rock star. Always loved your dad. One of the best attorneys that money could buy. And then his son comes along, and like every father's dream, they hope their kid is a little more successful than they are. I always said to my son, there's only going to be one man in your whole life that will ever say this to you, that I want you to be more successful than me, and it's your dad.
Yeah.
And so your dad has to be like super proud of you.
Yes.
And so here you are. We have spoken about raise the age. We have spoken about bail reform, and we from different levels, right? John McDonald from the Assembly, Sheriff Apple from law enforcement, and I'm really happy that we can have you. But before we jump into that, explain to me this: you are a rock star attorney representing some of the highest profile cases in the Capital Region, and you kind of walk away from that to become a district attorney, which is on the whole other spectrum, right? At least from my perspective.
Maybe you went from a pitcher to now a batter.
Yeah, and so somehow you're now a
designated hitter.
And I'd love to hear that, Lee, because I think you've given, for me personally, I think you've given up a lot to come into a public sector role, which I believe in your heart means so much to you. But explain to me how you go from a rock star defense attorney now to a public defender. It's a whole different, set of
Sure.
rules.
Sure.
That's a great opening question. So, um, a couple of years ago, I had decided I was just kind of burnt out being a defense attorney. And so actually, the story begins 2021, maybe. I went back to law school at night, basically, to get my LLM, which is like an advanced kind of specialized law degree in financial compliance and risk management, which is a little dry, but it was my goal to actually to move on from being a defense attorney because I just didn't want to do it anymore. I was doing these trials and running a small business, and for me, I had kind of decided that I had checked every box I ever wanted to check in being a defense attorney. The challenge for me wasn't there anymore. So I thought about, so I got this LLM, it's called, and I was really thinking about just going in-house and just kind of moving on to a different stage of my law career. And it's funny, I graduated, so the limo trial, which I did, obviously, I got the verdict on a Wednesday, and I graduated from Albany Law School on that Friday morning, and thought, okay, like this is me moving on, and that was in the May of 23, just about 2 years ago. 24 started really kind of thinking about doing other things. And then this opportunity to run for DA came along, and I said, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. Because I knew, like, I still loved the criminal law. I still loved the function of it. But I decided to run for office back in, 18 months ago. And, yeah, and so here I am. So, yeah, it was a change. And certainly I understand the criticisms.
Yeah.
Like, what's this? This guy's going to come and be our DA and open up all the jail cell doors and let everybody, and I certainly understood that was like a political talking point. But the men and women who knew me were like, no. Whatever Lee does, he does at 100 miles an hour. So if he's going to be the DA, certainly he's going to do that to the best of his ability. So here I am.
So I said that when you were running. First of all, I think David Soers, he wore out his welcome because over the course of 20 years, a lot of things changed in the world, right? And he never shifted his paradigms. And then when he did, he got caught up in that whole thing with taking money that should have been for, hiring new attorneys and getting himself, all that nonsense. So I knew somebody was going to come out of the woodworks and run. I was shocked when I found out it was you, only because, again, I call you the rock star attorney because I used to say, if you ever need a great attorney, call Lee Kinlan. But even I, Lee, who was always a big fan of the man, being you, I had my concerns, right? I was like, is he going to come in now? And because we talked about this raise the age and this bail reform. And for a lot of people, a lot of young kids, it's almost like it's a revolving door of I can do what I want. I'm going to go to family court. Who cares? Nobody's going to do nothing. I'm never going to get in trouble. And they become a commodity for worse people to use them, right, as a tool to sell their drugs and beat up the person that didn't pay them or whatever. Bad shit that was going on. And so I was concerned as well. I said, is Lee going to come in? Is he like, you must have like a philosophy in your life that says, I want to be a defense attorney. How do you turn that philosophy around and say, now I want to put those people away? Maybe it's not like that. Maybe from the outside person, it looks like that. But from your point of view, explain to me how you can have, that passion to say, I'm going to protect these people. Justice has to have both sides. And now you're on the whole other side. How do you deal with that, like personally, philosophy?
So I will say there are people who they get a law school and they become an attorney, and like being a criminal defense attorney is just in their blood. It's what they have always wanted to do. It's what they believe. And I admire these men and women who say, no, this is who I am. My stepmother, Lori Shanks, is one of these people, just true believer to this day. Last night she was giving me grief, and which is fine. And then there are people who are like, nope, I want to be a prosecutor. That's all I've ever wanted to do. That's who I am. And those people exist on kind of either side. I'm kind of one of those guys in the middle who say, look, I'm a lawyer. I have this job, and I'm gonna, do it zealously. Is always the lawyer phrase. There was this. I didn't really struggle, but it's just a different way of thinking about how you can use the tools as a lawyer to get the best outcome for your client. And say 2 years ago, my client was the individual being charged with whatever, and now my client is kind of generically the people of Albany County, but the overall goal of what they want is public safety, putting bad guys away. Those people who need a second chance, you give them that second chance because you realize they got kind of caught up. But the skill I do have, like the thing that I'm grateful for the past, say, 18 years of my life. I moved back to Albany in 2006 and became a defense attorney then. Is the granularity, the ability to examine an individual and an individual's case and figure out what's best there. Like now I can kind of apply that broadly to the criminal justice system and say, okay, let's take the story about the kids. Like, yeah, raise the age is a giant problem. There's a law, but there's no scaffolding. There's no structure underneath it.
Yeah.
And so, you got kids who are raised in a terrible situation and know nothing else except, guns and drugs and violence. And with raise the age, I get the point is to reach into that bad situation, pull them out and say, here's a structure. Here's rehabilitation. Here's how we get you to a better place. I get that that's the point, right? But there's no pathway. And we're all kind of making it up as we go along. And unfortunately, we now are defaulting to just letting them go and wishing them well. And what I've said since day one is look, if raise the age is going to work, we need to have money, structure, foundation to the whole thing. We got to hold the kids who, think that, violence and guns and drugs is, the best way to do things. We got to hold them
there's no
accountable.
Consequences.
Right.
There's got to be consequences, and there apparently isn't. You go to right down to family court, and then you're in and out, and that's it. No consequences.
It's maddening, and so but the reality is, I can figure out just because I know these cases. I can figure out who deserves that second chance, and frankly, who doesn't deserve that second chance, and who deserves a consequence. The real frustrating thing that I have and that members of this office have right now is we have no way to cleave those two groups of people. And unfortunately, the default is nobody has consequences. And it's a really frustrating thing.
I'm glad to hear you say that because when we had the conversation, first of all, I believe in third chances. This is a world where we all make mistakes. And so what Raise the Age does, however, is puts this broad stroke over everybody and basically says, well, if you're this age, it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to family court. Now, Lee, family court, I hate to say it this way, but it's a cesspool. I've been there. I've done it. I've seen it. When I was a chairman of the legislature, when I was trying to help, set up programs, it's a tough place for the judges to operate just with the family court issues. Now you're throwing these, these violent kids into, the family court. And then the bail reform. It's almost like, holy Christ, doesn't matter what you do. You most recently prosecuted a case right out of Cohoes. And the case started where it wasn't a young guy, but this guy was out there causing all kinds of havoc, throwing garbage cans at windows and, causing all kinds of problems. He gets arrested and he's out in about 15 minutes. A couple hours later, he's throwing rocks at cars as they're going by. Cops pull up, try to, shoo him away because they know if they arrest him again, they're just going to let him out. And then about 8:00 at night, he stabs somebody in the neck at Price Chopper and almost kills the person. It's those kind of events that frustrate the everyday citizen, right? Yeah. It's got to frustrate the police. It's got to frustrate the district attorney who really wants to do the right thing. Tell me where you stand when you see those things happening. What is your belief?
So, and this is a tough. I mean, this is a tough kind of, and I hate to be a lawyer about this, but it's a really tough situation because.
Well, you are a lawyer, Lee.
I know, so I'm going to give a lawyer answer, unfortunately. But you progress from a series of, kind of nonviolent criminal mischief things to suddenly the worst act of violence, just about the worst act of violence that one person can perpetrate on another. And you don't think that A and B are going to lead to C in the blink of an eye. So, let's go back to the old way of doing things. You pick somebody up, you charge them with criminal mischief. It's nonviolent. You could let them out. You could set bail. And you kind of hope that they don't have the money to pay for bail. Now the new system is they're charged with nonviolent offenses. Bail reform says, okay, we're not going to punish you just because you're poor and lock you up, so we let you go. And that's that kind of crucial thing behind bail reform is, look, people were being punished because they were poor and they just couldn't make bail. The larger discussion is, do we want to progress towards a system that goes on in federal court right now and has been going on in federal courts as long as I've been an attorney, is do we take dangerousness into account? New York state law says, no, we can't take dangerous into account. That's just code. Like, we can't do it. That's the law right now.
So
should we look? Yeah. Federal court release works pretty well, but that's it's difficult, and so it's tough because you don't want to punish people because they're poor, but you want to keep the streets as safe as possible. And you and I, we all know that just because you're poor doesn't mean you're dangerous, and so it's a really tough kind of where the rubber meets the road, tough problem for all of us to try and figure out.
Yeah, sometimes I think when you try to figure things out and you don't really have a plan in place, it becomes chaos. And I think right now we're chaotic. And the reason I think we're chaotic is because it's just like mental illness, Lee. I used to say, look, just because you're mentally ill doesn't mean you have a right to stab me. Right? Your mental illness doesn't take precedence over my life and my safety. I'm sorry you have a condition and you have a problem, but that doesn't mean you should just be able to go out and hurt me and then go, oh, I'm mentally ill. It's the same thing with being poor. Right? If you're, first of all, most people who have lots and lots of money ain't out in the streets doing some of the things that most people who are getting arrested for on the local level. Not saying that they don't, but chances are they're not selling crack in an alleyway, or they're not beating people up in the park. They have their own kind of crimes. But if somebody's poor, their economic or social standards should not directly affect my health, my life, and my benefit to live a free life without worrying about somebody over here.
Without getting stabbed in the neck. It's
right, and getting stabbed in the neck. So yeah, I get the balance, but doesn't it make sense that even the smallest penalty does make you think maybe you shouldn't do it an hour later? Like if somebody said, "Hey, you're gonna get A or B," and if you're a judge, maybe today's world seems a little different with judges. But if you're a judge, you would think that they would have the wherewithal to be able to determine whether what somebody did is dangerous enough not to just say, see you later.
Yeah.
But,
like violent crimes,
Sorry, Tim.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So one of the things we're doing is, again, there's some frustrations and limitations in the law. So here in the office, we're starting to step up the use of bail revocation motions. So like, hey, you're out, you're released, and then you do a thing that violates the condition of your release, whatever it is, or, one of the things now in the bail law is what's called harm on harm. So if we can demonstrate that you caused a harm while you're released on a different crime, we can then ask for increased restrictions on your movement, including bail, remand, all these things. So we're starting to file more and more bail revocation motions, and that's just stepped up enforcement of what the law is, educating judges when they can actually use their discretion to lock somebody up. And before this podcast, I had a staff meeting in here in which we're all discussing some budget initiatives we're going to start to take is because the public defender does this now. They send attorneys to arraignment to advocate on behalf of their client, but we don't have ADAs at every arraignment, 10 o'clock in Cohoes on a Thursday night or whatever. We're going to start to find a way to incentivize our ADAs to go to court and match and be there advocating on behalf of the people, whatever our
So the same argument saying, hey, don't let him out because of this. So now you're good.
Right. So I
Sounds like a
want
smart
people
move.
there in court. Yeah. And
Smart
so
move.
we've got to, the public defender has grant money. We don't have grant money for that. So I'm trying to find money in our budget. So
Well,
I
tonight
can
at 8. Tonight at 8 o'clock, I got Danny McCoy coming on the show, so we'll
Yeah.
hit Danny up for some of that money.
Yeah, we'll squeeze them for you.
So yeah, we're gonna. So we have to kind of work within the boundaries of the law, educate judges, and start to figure out, again with some granularity, the best solution for the restrictions we have now.
I'll tell you, Lee, it seems like you found your place, bro.
Yeah.
I think
and the best part is, we get to blame Danny McCoy now.
No, Dan and I actually work really well together.
Danny's he's the best. He's the best, and I think he's a smart guy. He's also a military guy. He was a firefighter. We were both firefighters. We were both in the county ledge. We were both chairman of the legislature. He's a very smart guy, and I think you got a good partner there. Listen, we all know that everything comes down to dollars and cents in government. I mean, you got to balance it because the people got to pay for it. But I think when you can present yourself a solid plan that really looks like it's going to have a residual benefit to people, I think the government is more than willing to invest in that. What scares me the most about government right now, and it's a lot of DAs, and I hate to say it, but we are seeing, I call them woke DAs all over this country, where people are committing violent crimes, bad crimes, and they're not even prosecuting them. And I always thought it was funny. And I used to say, how does a guy or a gal who takes the oath to be a DA have a right to just say, we're not going to prosecute them? I didn't think they could just throw a case out because they felt like it. I thought there had to be some kind of, substance to it. So can you just throw a case out because you just feel like you don't want to prosecute it? Like, I'm going to use the incident where a gentleman caused $20,000 worth of damage to a Tesla store, right? Mm-hmm. And, he's related somehow in a work relationship with a governor of a state. And somehow the prosecutor says, well, we prosecuted him, but we're going to do this diversion program. I've seen diversion programs. I started one in Cohoes for speeding on the highway. I never seen one for burning down a building. But there seems to be all of these ways for DAs who are trying not to prosecute. At least that's the picture that you see, right? When you turn on the news, the picture is that a lot of people are getting away with a lot of bad things and DAs ain't prosecuting. And I don't know if it's because that's the DA's philosophy, Timmy, or is that just because that's the way government's pushing
Sean, I've seen this a lot, and basically it boils down to prioritizing the limited resources that they have. Okay, and I hear that a lot. That's what I hear a lot, okay?
Well, so I've seen it, frankly, we see it now on the federal level, is choosing not to prosecute some people for political reasons. My predecessors, chose not to prosecute all the Occupy Albany protesters and the protesters throughout.
Well, that's one of the guys I was talking about, without throwing his name out there. But David, when he let them all just go.
Right. Mm-hmm. And, I know of other cases in other counties in which DAs just chose not to prosecute because, again, there might be call it a justice issue or a lack of proof issue. We've had to make that decision here a couple of times just not to go forward. But ultimately there's no decision. The decision rests entirely with the district attorney's office.
Well, here's what I do know, Lee. I got to tell you this. all of those people who had you for 18 years to get out of trouble are some lucky son of a guns. All those people who are getting in trouble and they got to face you, they're not going to be so lucky. And I'm really excited about Albany County because I worry about the city of Albany, where we've seen all kinds of gun violence and murders and young kids just emboldened to be, whatever they want to be in the way of criminals. And we've set up a society where we say, hey, it's okay to go steal long as it's only under $900, and we can do this as long as it's this, and we won't prosecute you if you do that. And we just send a bad message. We stir the pot and stir the pot. What the hell do you think a kid at 17, 18 is going to think if government's saying we're not going to prosecute you? California, you can steal up to $900. Don't you think the kid's going to go out and steal $895 or something? I mean, we have to have a society where people are afraid, not in the sense like, oh my God, I'm petrified, but afraid that if they do something that they're not supposed to do, there's going to be a consequence. Because failure to have fear, failure to have a concern, and failure to think there's going to be a consequence just allows you to run wild. And
well, you
Albany,
learn that you learn that the first thing as a child, Sean.
yeah.
Right.
Well, Albany has seen some wild moments, Lee. And what are you going to do to try to fix those problems with the guns and this, the violence in Albany? What's the office doing? Do you have a new concept different than David Soares' concept, which to me was just basically he was a social worker and nobody was being held accountable. And it's nice because I think people need second chances. I think even when you punish somebody, the punishment is based on the fact that, hey, we got to punish you, but we're not going to, destroy you here. We want you to have a second chance when you're done, a third chance, but something has to be done. And tell me what you're doing.
And that includes white collar crime as well.
So let's talk about your example about retail. So, like again, I understand sometimes there's a person who's stealing baby formula because they can't feed their kids, right? But then there are people stealing baby formula, in boxes to sell it on Central Avenue in bulk, or to bring it to a bodega and resell it there to profit. So again, like I've got the experience and the judgment and the ability to figure out which one's which, and I certainly trust the prosecutors in my office to discern which one's which. So diversion for the people, and then help for the people who need to feed their kids, and then beefing up what is going to be our retail crime task force, working with all the law enforcement heads throughout the county, maybe even bringing in some federal resources to prosecute the larger retail crime theft rings that have sprung up and are going on in Albany, and then figure out some pretty severe consequences for these people.
Yeah, that's refreshing.
Right. So
it's refreshing to hear.
We're going. And it's foot on the gas time. And the guns thing, that's another good example is, again, you've got a kid who carries a gun because he's been threatened. He doesn't actually want to use it, but he just knows that guns exist, and so he's got it. And so Andra Ackerman, from Cohoes, she started this UCAN program. It's very limited. We've got a gun program. So it's like, hey, kid, you're carrying a gun. You're being a knucklehead. You're not actually using it. We're going to give you a chance. But we've got kids who are carrying guns because the only way they know is violence, guns, intimidation, bad stuff. So you better believe, and we're moving, like you got to believe, like people get charged. If we can't get a quick resolution on a gun case that involves prison time, and we know these people are, because the intelligence apparatus that we have, thanks to the state police and the crime analysis center here in Albany, we know who you are, we know who your associates are, we know what you're doing. And so we can get those guns off the street faster. We can get the bad guys off the street faster. And we're starting to see, very slowly, but we're starting to see law enforcement have more faith in my office. We're starting to see the impact of getting all the guns off the streets. I got to give a lot of credit to the Albany police, who are down 80 people, but also credit to Craig Apple, because his men and women are out working as hard as they can to get guns off the streets. And very slowly but surely, we're seeing the impact of their work. Violence is down in Albany County and in Albany. Murders are down in Albany and Albany County. So
rape is up.
Yeah. Now again,
so
that's a numbers thing, and numbers are always, but but we're starting to really make a dent, and I'm really excited about the direction we're going.
You've been listening to Truth, Lies, and Political Bullshit. Sick and tired of all the stuffy podcasts? We wanted to create something real, something raw, where there are no limits. Sean has held political office for 20 years, been a professional firefighter, and been through hell and back. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. See you next time on Truth, Lies, and Political Bullshit.